Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we've got an update relating to Tesla's Semi program. We also have news on Tesla software, updated China insured vehicle numbers, a little bit of news on Fremont, and more. Quick look at the stock. Tesla today down 2.4%, closing at $261.07, while the Nasdaq was down 0.4% on the day, but underperformed the Dow, which was up 0.2%, usually indicative of worse days for higher growth companies like Tesla. All right, we'll start off with the update on the Semi. So this is a report from Bloomberg that Tesla is seeking almost $100 million from federal funds, which although Tesla is able to benefit from things like tax credits and regulatory structures, they don't seem to go out and seek funding too often, so pretty interesting. And in this case, they are reportedly seeking funds to develop a Tesla Semi charging network from Texas to California. This is according to emails seen by Bloomberg. They further report that, quote, the company proposed each be equipped with 8 750 kilowatt chargers for Tesla Semi vehicles and 4 chargers for trucks made by its competitors, its executives said in emails to the Texas Department of Transportation between May and early July, end quote. So a few interesting things just in that statement. First, the 750 kilowatt thing, this keeps coming back up. The math continues to not make sense to me, but Pepsi keeps talking about that rate. Now it's apparently showing up in these emails. Maybe that is the rate. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing something, but it seems like the comment sections have previously agreed on that, so I guess we'll see. Anyway, also interesting that they plan for 8 Tesla Semi chargers and then 4 for competitors. I'm sure they kind of have to do that to have potential access to these federal funds. But if the North American charging standard continues to gain traction and truly does become the standard for light passenger vehicles, it's tough to imagine that that would not also happen for Tesla with their development for the Semi charger in a very similar way, but now with the benefit of some precedents for that already happening in the light vehicle segment. With that number of chargers though, whether it's 8 or 12, that should be able to support a pretty significant fleet traveling along this route, because obviously that means they could potentially charge that many simultaneously, and each vehicle only needs to charge for somewhere around probably a half an hour. And in a logistics business, you should be able to pretty easily plan around the rest of the fleet so that utilization is quite high, because you can schedule a vehicle to arrive when you know another one is going to be leaving. It's not going to be 100%, stuff will happen that throws things off, but theoretically, even at about 50% utilization, you should be able to charge a couple hundred vehicles each day at each of these stations. From Bloomberg's report, it looks like there would be 9 stations planned along this route, each station about 200 to 300 miles apart, with the route kind of looking like it goes from Giga Texas to Tesla's Fremont factory, but that station in Texas, that is actually a few hours south of Giga Texas. However, I would imagine that if you start with a full charge at Giga Texas, you could make your way west over to the Fort Stockton, Texas station to join up with this charging route. And this Laredo station is actually very interesting because that's probably on the direct path between Giga Mexico and Giga Texas, and it's actually about 100 miles closer to Giga Mexico than Giga Texas. I'm sure that is not at all coincidental, and this would provide a really nice connection for Tesla between Fremont, Texas, and Mexico. So hopefully this will come to fruition whether Tesla gets federal funding support or not. Although they did not comment on it directly, Bloomberg says that a representative for the US DOT said that they are currently reviewing applications and they expect to announce recipients later this year. A representative at California's South Coast Air Quality Management District also commented on this and said that Tesla is seeking $97 million in federal funding and planning to put up $24 million themselves. So that seems to corroborate the report, and also interesting to see the total expected costs from Tesla. Alright, next up we've got another week of China insured vehicle numbers. Of course, last week we saw a little bit of a drop in these weekly registration numbers. However, that has spiked back up to 10,600 again this week. So looking like a more normal pace, that's about 31,500 through the first 4 weeks. That is down from roughly 41,500 last quarter. So definitely off to a little bit slower of a start, but not anything that couldn't change over a couple weeks from here. We'll continue to keep an eye on those as they come in. Next up today, we do have a report of an investigation by the US government into Tesla. Sounds aggressive, right? And I suppose technically correct. This is a preliminary evaluation from NHTSA on 2023 model year Tesla Model 3 and Model Y vehicles due to some reports of inability to steer the vehicle and the loss of power steering. It looks like there have been 12 complaints filed relating to this issue, and the estimated pool of possibly affected vehicles is about 280,000. So even though this is called an investigation by NHTSA's terminology, let's again remind ourselves of NHTSA's process, in which an investigation is actually a step prior to recall. And of course, recalls happen all the time in automotive. Tesla gets a lot of attention for them, but really nobody else does. It is a part of the business, and Tesla does a good job of keeping their recall rates low. So even though this is a stage prior to a recall, the word investigation and the headlines around it make it sound even more serious, which isn't to say that possible steering issues are not serious, of course they are, but the result of this investigation stage would ultimately lead to either no recall necessary, no issues, or a recall, which again is something that happens. So NHTSA is going to be looking at this, Tesla's going to be looking at this, figuring out what the issue is, figuring out how to resolve it, and then they'll do just that. Usually it's a pretty easy fix, but obviously there's a potential here that this could be a costly recall for Tesla. We'll just have to wait and see as things develop. Next, we've got a quick report on Fremont from Teslarati. This came out a little bit later in the day yesterday, but apparently Tesla has started to file some permits again in terms of construction at Fremont. We've talked about a handful of these over the last few months, but Teslarati now saying that the most recent filing is for a tool installation and fire monitoring system. Both of these were filed on July 28th, with the permit for the tool installation saying that it was for demolition of existing equipment and installation of new equipment. So nothing surprising there, with Elon having talked on the Q2 earnings call about upgrades to production happening this quarter. Plus, we have previously seen similar permits for Fremont, but potentially a little bit more evidence of further upgrades here. Next up, we've got a couple more details from Not a Tesla app on the 2023.26 software update for Tesla. This is not a part of the FSD beta branch yet, but we had previously talked about some of the improvements in this version with things like Spotify, some games, etc. Now a couple more features to add to that list. The first is that when you are on a call now, Tesla will automatically reduce the fan speed for climate control to help reduce ambient noise and make the call a little bit clearer. I would assume that there is some logic in there that if that causes the temperature control to drop too significantly or increase too significantly, that it would probably respond accordingly and then kick that back up a little bit, but it's not clear on that. And then the other possible update here is from some language that appears in the owner's manual but doesn't actually appear in the software yet, and that is potentially the capability to move the rear-facing camera, the position of it, on the touchscreen. Obviously that's a capability right now for the blinker cameras, and it seems like Tesla may intend to add that functionality for the rear camera, which could potentially allow you to have it up all the time in a way that wouldn't necessarily cover up other things that you may want or need to use on the screen. So again, not active yet, maybe just something that Tesla is working on that got included in the owner's manual a little bit too early, but we'll see on that. Last item for today is an update from Ford. They have announced that they have restarted F-150 Lightning production after some upgrades that will allow them to increase their production to a target of 150,000 annual run rate, which they say will happen by this fall. This increase in production was given as a reason for the price cuts on the F-150 Lightning that we saw a couple weeks ago, and Ford in this announcement notes that those lower prices helped drive a 3-fold increase in web traffic and a 6-fold increase in orders, although I don't think they specified exactly the time period on that. So it'll be interesting to see how the ramp goes from here. They say they're scheduled to build more than 70,000 F-150 Lightnings this year, and they also gave a graphic of their expected and historical sales and production for the F-150 Lightning, which does show their expectations for production outpacing sales, as they seem to intend to build inventory as this ramp increases. Alright, that is where we'll wrap it up for today then. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter/X at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the Wednesday, August 2nd episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.